All right, welcome to the Bryce Eddy Show. Hey, special episode today because we are going to be interviewing an amazing guy, former DEA agent Mark Ibrahim. He was a warrior, served our country, multiple capacities, super stud. His biggest claim to fame, though, is being one of my friends. And with that, we are going to talk about what he just went through over the last several years. Praise God for Donald Trump and his pardon, because now Mark can talk about what really went on J6. We're going to tease a little bit in this episode because he's coming out here to Idaho and he's going to do a show with me live at the Old State Saloon. So you're going to want to pay attention to that. Join our mailing list at bryceeddy.com so you know when that's happening. Pay attention to what's going on the calendar events for Old State Saloon. And we have a real fun time in store because now these things can be exposed. Hey, brother, how are you today? Mark, love you, man. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Praise God, man. And happy to be here and happy to speak on behalf of truth.
Yeah, well, to that end, really quick, man, give your bio and kind of your quick career trajectory. And then I want to talk about what got you a target by the Biden administration and all of those fools. So start with your bio.
Yeah, so I was an Army officer, commissioned out of Georgetown. I was intel. My last unit was 20th Special Forces Group. And I got out, worked for the intelligence community for quite some time. I followed my blood brother into the Army and then into federal law enforcement. He went FBI. I felt like they were a bunch of analysts with guns and corrupt analysts with guns. And so I decided to go DEA. I felt like they were a little bit more kinetic. And, we were losing more U.S. citizens to the opioid pandemic and fentanyl than any other issue. So I figured if my job as a patriot and loving this country, I wanted to defend citizens from dying, I figured the DEA would be the premier agency to do that with. And so I joined the DEA. And but before I was an agent there, while I was part of the IC, I did some undercover work, trying to expose ISIS cells and find HVTs in Iraq, Kurdistan, Syria, as well as their cells inside the United States, being an Arabic linguist. And and then while I was out doing that work, I linked up with an FBI informant named Jorge Calzadilla, who asked me to take him to the rally. So he said, "Mark, can you come, please?" He knew I was armed and he knew I could protect him. So I said, sure. Me and him were in Iraq together and multiple firefights together. And so I picked him up and we got out there and didn't do anything wrong. And he said, "Mark, I'm going to go in the building." I said, "If you go in that building, I'm going to arrest you or leave you here." It's imagine if you drive a friend to the bank and he says, "I'm going to go rob the bank." You're like, no, I'm not going to be a part of this. I'm not going to be a part of you breaking the law. So being a federal agent, I had the arrest authority to arrest him if he committed any felonies, which he did, because he did ultimately. I saw some footage. I think he did go in the building, but this was many, many years after the fact that I found out. So, and when he went in the building, I have no knowledge of him going in the building, and I kept calling him, and he told me he didn't. But I think I saw some footage of him in there. But regardless, he got angry that he couldn't go and be a spy for this corrupt Department of Justice and turn in fellow patriots. So he took the photos of me in the crowd and sold it to Reuters for about $100,000 or something like that. Reuters ran the story. DEA knew who I was and they knew my character. So they put me on standby, and then they what was it? They suspended me for my role in January 6th for 3 months. They had 3 suspensions, all because of January 6th. And then I got fired for performance issues. So I don't know why I didn't get fired for performance issues when those performance issues happened, but I got fired for performance issues after being suspended for 3 months for January 6th. And then I went on Tucker Carlson speaking up saying, "Hey, I got fired. It's a shame. I love my country. I've been blown up multiple times and multiple TBIs, and then after Tucker Carlson, they indicted me and arrested me for carrying my gun as a federal agent, which I flew there on the plane armed, which we're allowed to as federal agents. Flew back from D.C. to California armed, and they called me in the office, took my badge and gun away from me, treated me like a criminal, and yeah, that was facing like 16 years in prison. So.
Yeah, well, you embarrassed them. You started speaking out against what you kind of knew was happening in the crowd, and we're going to tease some of that stuff. But you're working on seeing what names you can name and how much you can expose. And of course, you're being responsible legally and not compromising people in that. But what it was is you went on Tucker Carlson and you embarrassed them. You showed that there was something more to the story. And that's why they retaliated against you and, kind of took over. Took everything they possibly could from you overnight. It was a quick move against you. I met you right after that. And I remember, brother, you were despondent. You'd been kicked in the teeth because, you loved what you were doing. You loved this country. You were in its service. You were doing good work. You were a true door kicker. When it came to the DEA, you were having incredible effect out there. I saw the photos of the busts you were a part of and the things that you were doing, and even deep undercover. You're a hero. And so for them to do that to you was solely because they had this narrative that they needed to promote, and you were essentially a whistleblower.
Right. Well, it's common knowledge now, and that the DOJ under the Biden administration released that there are 26 informants in the rally. Jorge Calzadilla being one of them, but and now it's common knowledge, but back then it wasn't. This was a armed insurgency designed to overthrow America, and it gave the left, all the evil, corrupt left, all the ammo they needed to go shoot and indict Trump and literally shoot at him. And it's tragic. So yeah, I need to speak with my attorney and see about the names that I can release of the corrupt AUSAs involved and the DOJ IG investigator who knew the facts, because I knew the FBI SWAT team. I trained with them, or some of them, the members of the FBI SWAT team. I knew the team medic and sniper really well. And so well, he told me that, when Ashley Babbitt was shot, that he was trying to resuscitate her. And so I need to talk to my attorney and see if I can release the names, of these gentlemen and people and corrupt individuals. But yeah, I spoke up. My brother was an FBI agent standing right there with his badge and gun. There's no such thing as off duty, but he wasn't assigned to the Capitol that day. And they did not arrest him because they did not want to show, because my brother was texting multiple other FBI agents that day. We walked up to the FBI SWAT team, the WFO SWAT team, which my brother also knows some of the team members there. They knew both of us by name, had our personal cell phones, and we offered assistance. I offered to watch their vehicles. They were being harassed by some other J6ers. And I said, these guys are patriots because I know them personally. I offered to go in a stack into the building. The FBI SWAT team that day is what ultimately shut it down. The Capitol Police obviously were going off of some weird orders to open doors and let people in and do some weird stuff. But, and then after that corrupt Capitol police officer shot Ashley Babbitt, cowardly, I might add, aiming for her head. And if you look at the footage, he was aiming for her head and he dips the gun because he doesn't know how to fire a firearm, shoots her in the neck, and she bleeds out. I'd really like to see justice for Ashley Babbitt.
Yes.
And anyway, so yeah, I spoke up. I said there were FBI informants in the crowd because I was bringing one to the crowd. My brother's an FBI agent. There are multiple other agents in the crowd, probably assigned to the Capitol building that day. And the DOJ destroying all the paper. All the evidence of what they were doing that day. And you can see why Biden had to pardon all of the people on the J6 committee. I mean,
yeah, because they were liars. I mean, they lied. They engineered this thing. This was from the beginning. This was manufactured in order to embarrass Trump, in order to have this narrative that he is this, Nazi tyrant that was bent on overthrowing the United States of America. And, they had to have that narrative because, come on, we know what a real insurgency looks like. We know what a real coup looks like. Throughout all of history, it's not done by flagpoles and broomsticks. It's done by weapons and overwhelming force that equal that of the law enforcement that's in opposition. And so it was a dumb narrative that they had to have the useful idiots in our country continue to promote, our media continue to promote. It, as far as I'm concerned, was engineered from start to finish. And more of that is coming out. So that those committee members, had to promote that, and then they had to destroy the evidence that they promoted that.
100%. I mean, you see that with Nancy Pelosi not taking the guard that Trump offered them. You just see it with it. I mean, a lot of things with Capitol Police officers opening the doors, and you see that with the unprecedented weaponization of the DOJ against individual. I mean, everybody from the arresting officer all the way to all the judges to Merrick Garland himself were convinced that we're domestic terrorists. And I was never convicted. I was supposed to go to trial actually today, and yesterday. I was supposed to go to trial yesterday, and I got no. Today's the 23rd, right?
Yeah, as we're recording this, yes.
Yeah, today's the 23rd. I was supposed to go to trial today, and I got my pardon last night. And my judge, Tim Kelly, was refusing to sign it, and I had to actually reach out to Charlie Kirk, who was with the president, to make this happen. So, I mean, it's just unprecedented. Where, like, when you arrest somebody, you have a systems of checks and balances. Mainly, it's your superior agents. They'll tell you you can, you can't. Then you go to a district attorney or an AUSA, and they say you can or you can't, or I can't prove this in a court of law, or you violated this, or it's fruits of a poisonous tree, or blah, blah, blah. And then eventually you go to the judge. A grand jury is supposed to be a kind of a checks and balances where you're indicted by a group of your peers, but obviously that was corrupt, and the statement is very true. You can indict a ham sandwich. The defendants and no positive evidence is in a grand jury indictment, and it's just sad. I mean, the special agent, I think his name is Jason Wrigley, is a DOJ IG special agent who was never really a special agent anywhere. I think he worked for the Secret Service and then got in at the IG office with the DOJ. Read the reports that I helped the FBI SWAT team that day, and he was like, you know what? Not important. Doesn't fit my narrative. This guy is a psychopathic domestic terrorist. And sorry, I getting a phone call. And so you just completely ignore the justice. That's why it's not the Department of Justice. It's the Department of attacking your political rivals, the Department of guilty until proven innocent. And even you think that'd be enough evidence that when you talk to the FBI SWAT team assigned the Capitol building that day, that I offered them assistance, that they were not threatened by my presence with a weapon, that I offered to go into the Capitol building and help them, that I offered to watch their vehicles, and that I left people that were harassing them, yelling at them alone. You would be like, okay, like this guy's clearly one of us. He's a good guy. I had my service pistol on me that day, and I never unholstered it. But for some reason, I'm called a domestic terrorist.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, anybody who's on the periphery of law enforcement at all and understands the difference between federal law enforcement, state law enforcement, and what all of that entails, knows that it was perfectly appropriate for you to be armed, and you were legally armed, even off duty, even in any capacity, because of being a federal law enforcement official. And so they had to create and craft a narrative in order to punish you for embarrassing them and for letting it be known that you knew what they were doing, and that this was a manufactured story in order to paint these J6ers as domestic terrorists. They needed to do that. They needed that narrative to kind of reign supreme in our culture in order to attack Trump. And the worst part of this, man, and you and I talked about it a lot, is all the people that were in pretrial confinement, being moved from jail to jail, prison to prison, all of them. I mean, this is modern day gulags. We're not talking about, nice atmospheres. We're talking about some of the worst treatment that people had ever received. Their constitutional rights were being constantly violated. I mean, it was a bad system. And some of these folks were, we're not talking about the ones that fought the police. I mean, there are guys that were doing some dumb stuff.
Well, I want to make a quick statement, because we didn't know Trump was going to do a blanket pardon, and everybody says they assaulted police officers that day and blah, blah, blah. And I'm sure there may be some of legitimate cases, and they got the full blunt force of the justice coming down on them. But I have a friend, Luke Coffey, who was beaten and by multiple batons, and he put his hand up to blow baton, and I think this happened to another girl, and they grabbed the baton. The baton never left the police officer's hands. They never turned the baton on the police officers. They're just trying to stop from getting beaten by multiple grown men with batons, and they were charged with assault with a deadly weapon on a police officer. So that's why I'm very proud of Donald Trump. I mean, promises made, promises kept. Praise God. I mean,
well, let's think about
it's just they could never ever would you be able to manipulate, unless everybody was in on it, that assault on a police officer is you getting your ass beat, and you raise your hand to stop the beatings, to protect your vital organs, your brain, and you grab a baton while it's still in their hand, and you get charged with assault with a deadly weapon.
Yeah, having reviewed all the tapes that come out, having seen all of the video evidence, and knowing what those guys ultimately ended up serving in terms of the process that they went through, all of them faced more consequences than any of the BLM folks ever did. Any of the people,
and there's only one federal judge, Trevor McFadden, who is an American hero and a patriot, appointed by Trump, also with my judge, who refused to sign the paperwork. Trevor McFadden's the only federal judge that spoke up and said there is a great difference with the heavy-handedness of the J6ers and the lack of interest in prosecuting any of the Summer of Passion social justice warriors, where police officers were actually killed, billions of dollars of federal buildings were burned, and like, it's insane. It's absolutely insane. And speaking of the Department of Justice wrongly treating the prisoners, I have a friend who I've met through this. His name's Derek Kennison. He's an American hero. Never went in the building. Never heard anybody. He was there with a group and part of a group chat. And I don't know what somebody said, or it might have even been an informant who said it on the chat. And they said, hey, that's not kind of what we're here for. We're patriots and we don't want to hurt people. And he deleted the chat. Well, he was charged with conspiracy, sedition. And when he left the chat because he didn't like what somebody was saying on it, which is his constitutional right, they charged him with destruction of evidence. He served 9 months and 1 year in federal prison, and he was moved 6 times. And he said it was absolutely awful, from Con Air to he referred to the Federal Bureau of Prisons as a human trafficking ring, because prisons are privately owned, or a lot of them are, and they were just shuffling them around. So they couldn't get comfortable. They couldn't make friends. Their lives were at danger if any other prisoners believed the narrative that they were insurrectionists. And 6 times in 9 months. I don't know why. There's still prisoners right now in the DC Gulag, Jeremy Brown being one of them, who served 20 years as a special forces operator. And then he's being moved today I just got off the phone with his wife for no reason. He's at the DC Gulag. He's been sentenced to like 8 years in prison, something like that. Why does he need to be moved today? There's a group of patriots outside the DC Gulag right now demanding the release of these people, and this guy is being moved. Like, why?
Yeah.
I don't know. But apparently, the Department of Justice hasn't got the freaking message, and that's why I'm doing this. Like, it's time to be brave. It's time to stand up. And I wish my only regret about this whole situation was I wish I was braver to speak up when under federal indictment. And I did. I mean, I went on Tucker Carlson. Part of this whole thing, I highlighted myself on Tucker Carlson multiple times. But I wish I said more. And but it's difficult when you have a newborn son and they're telling him you're never going to see him again. Or by the time that I get released, he's going to be 17 years old.
Yeah, no, it's evil, it's wicked. As far as I'm concerned, the people who, did get into fights with the officers because of the way that they were treated, because of what they went through financially, because of how many of them already have spent time in jail, in the gulags, all of that, the pursuit against them. I mean, it is time served. But because most of those things were even misdemeanors, many of those things were very, very minor infractions. Had they been BLMers or protesters in any other vein, they would have been treated so lightly, it would have been ridiculously embarrassing. So the fact is that Trump did this blanket pardon, I think was the right thing to do, even for the people that crossed the line, even for the people that were idiots. But also, man, I watched the footage. You did too. That crowd was ginned up. That crowd was antagonized. I believe it to be intentional in order to have this narrative, in order to have those things on camera, in order for all of these a-hole leftist accounts to say, never forget, look what happened, and showing those sort of things and all that stuff in order to move against Trump, to make sure that he didn't come in and clean house like he's doing right now. So, brother, you were courageous the entire time. I've been right there by your side. I've been with you. We've, talked until, late hours in the evening. I've witnessed what you went through. I've witnessed the hundreds of thousands of dollars this has cost you and everybody else. Your courage is without question. I don't think you should look back and have a single regret. And praise God, dude, that you have been released from that stuff now, and you can be a fighter for everyone else that is still waging the war, man. I love you for that, and God bless you, bro.
Thank you, man. Yeah, and I just want to thank God. Like, honestly, God delivers us in hopeless situations. I really want to thank Pastor Rob McCoy. He came along my side when very few people did. He's the reason why we got to know each other, because you remember at Godspeak. He really saved my life and gave me the encouragement. And I kept thinking, being a former federal agent, going to prison, and what was in store for me there, being a former Fed. And he said, Mark, we'll cross that river when we get there. And that raging river is a dried up creek bed. And now it's time for retribution and reparations. And I really want to thank Charlie Kirk for speaking up and really pushing. He just did a podcast on the J6 pardons, and he did a shout out to me. And it's just like, it's a miracle that, when miracles happen, it's just like, wow, your faith is real, and God came through for us in a big, big way. God saved Donald Trump from being killed. And I don't know. I think it is the golden age for America. And I would just encourage anybody who is harassed, abused, arrested, like, speak up. Just speak up so that we never go back there again. Because America had way more cowards than we did patriots and heroes for a long time. And what's shocking to me is how few federal agents spoke up and said, I can't do this. This is illegal. I felt like all my friends and guys that I knew went to the academy with and trained together. They were like the Nazis that said they were just doing their job, you know? And so, it's nothing new. I have a very good friend on SEAL Team. It was in SEAL Team 5 and SEAL Team 3. He was a Trump appointee, and they came after him. And he pled to a felony. The judge saw right through it because he wasn't a J6er, said that this was complete BS and only charged him $100 for the court fees, but he's a felon. and he's been bearing that punishment and the shame of that label for many years. And God willing, we'll get him his pardon. I can't give his name out, but he's an American hero. Multiple combat deployments to Somalia, Ramadi in 05, Iraq. I mean, the guy is a hero. And again, he's not a J6er, so the judge didn't throw the book at him, but he was attacked by a corrupt DOJ. And so I hope that there's going to be new DOJ reform with this administration. I hope Kash Patel sets things right. I hope Trump sets things right. I mean, it's just coming as a former federal agent. It's not the Department of Justice. It's the Department of Criminal Stats and the Department of Prosecuting people who your boss tells you to prosecute.
Yeah, no, it's shameful, and you're right. There has been a lack of courage. I know many of these same people that that were more concerned about their pensions and more concerned about their jobs and doing the right thing. And when enough of those guys do that, you have injustice. When enough guys like you stand up and say, we're not going to do this, then it doesn't take many. Two can fight 10. You just need enough guys to go, this is wrong, and refuse to do their job and highlight it and blow the whistle. And had we had more of those guys with your level of courage, we would have had a different result entirely. They would not have been able to get away with this. So listen, man, I'm proud of you. I'm so excited about having you out and diving even deeper into your background, your story, and also naming some names and continuing to highlight what's gone on so that there can be true reform under this new administration. And, again, praying for guys like Kash Patel to get through confirmation process and everything else that's needed so we have true courageous reformers come in and set things right. So hey man, you want to give a shout out to any way to follow you right now? Or I mean, I know I
don't have any social media yet. I think I don't know. I mean, I've never wanted to be in the limelight or be famous in any way, but I do have a lot of attorney fees. I mean, Marina Medvin was an amazing attorney. She got me here. I didn't go, other than my initial arrest, I never spent a day in prison. That's 4 years after the fact. Marina Medvin is a true American patriot and hero, but she's also an attorney at business. And so when once she sent me a lovely message saying this is concluded, and then the accountant sent me it was like, congratulations, your final bill is X. And I was like, okay. So I'm going to try to set up a Give, Send, Go under my name and try to just cover attorney fees. I don't need a single dime. I just would like my attorney fees covered. I mean, I've already spent over close to $200,000 to $300,000. I mean, around $300,000 in attorney fees, not just to her, but to my initial counselors in the beginning when I didn't know what I was doing. I just thank God that Go ahead.
You guys taking advantage of it at the beginning. I was right there with you on some of that stuff because there were attorneys that were going to prey on you guys. There were attorneys that jumped in. Hey, I can solve this. I can take care of this stuff. There was a lot of nefarious actors that glommed on to many of the J6ers. I saw a lot of that happen, and so yeah, man, I would love to help you with that. Especially on our next live episode, giving a shout out to the audience and the people that, even if they can contribute just a little bit to help you, pay for some of that stuff will be great. I hope, brother, that there's also restitution and your ability to go after the DEA for firing you and for everything else that they did, because man, God bless Trump for reinstating some of the back pay and things for other guys. I think those are things that you're due, and I'll be praying for all of that resolution as well.
Yeah, and my final message I'll tell you is it's kind of a spiritual thing, but faith over fear always. The Bible tells you not to fear 365 times. It's the most repeated commandment in the Bible. Do not fear, do not be anxious. It's not the greatest commandment, but it's the most repeated one. And I think it's the most repeated one because when you live in fear, you're living in fear is faith in the devil. Fear is faith in the outcome of what the devil will have for you. I was suicidal because I was living in the fear that I was going to go to jail and get raped and shanked, or I was going to have to fight for my life in prison, which is a very real reality. But faith is trusting in that God will save you. And that was something that Pastor Rob really pushed on me. He goes, Mark, have faith, not fear. And I would just encourage anybody watching this. We're going to encounter hard times our entire life.
That's right.
And the way to make it through it is not fear. Fear makes you kill yourself. Fear makes you have abortions. Fear makes you steal. Faith in God, that God has got your back. He sees your suffering, that he loves you, and he'll see this through you. And it'll be ultimately for your good is how he wants us to look through this. So just remember, fear is faith in the devil, and faith is in the outcome that God has got your back and he'll come through for you. And he did in a glorious, glorious way. And so I want to give all glory to God. And I just really want to thank you, Bryce, for being a patriot and like-minded. I mean, you were having your podcast and speaking up against the DOJ when it was corrupt. And you put yourself in the kind of the limelight as well, but you didn't care of what would happen to you. And now you're not just another conservative podcaster. You were my friend, but you spoke up against the DOJ while they were in power, while they had the ability to raid your house and deprive you of your things that you've worked hard for. And I really want to thank President Trump and Charlie Kirk and Rob McCoy. And I mean, I just think if it wasn't for the collective efforts of patriots who said, I don't care what happens to me, I trust in God, and I'm standing on the side of truth, we wouldn't be here today.
Yeah, no, man, that's true. And I appreciate those kind words, brother. I just told you not to whine sometimes. No, brother, I knew, man, I did have faith that God would work this stuff out for you. I also, at the same time, I had great compassion for the time you were in and just wanted you to keep your eyes up. And I love you. I love your friendship. I appreciate you so much. And I thank you for your courage. And I know you're going to use that to help others going forward who are still in the thick of it, because this battle is not over, man. And, we're not going to eradicate this kind of evil, these kind of people that tried to enslave us. We know we're not going to easily defeat them. And that battle will always be waged. But, praise God, we have a respite from it. And, man, I just thank you so much for coming on. I'm looking forward to doing this live and really getting into the details, because I think it's such an amazing story. And your background, brother, is really phenomenal. And you've got all kinds of other valuable stories and valuable insight to share. So thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you, Bryce.
All right. Well, hey, to God be the glory, brother. And we are out. Hey, thank you for watching or listening to this show. If you are someone who listens to us on the podcast apps, please go to our Rumble channel. Even if you're not going to watch us there, we'd appreciate you hitting subscribe. We want to boost those numbers up and make sure that channel continues to grow. But again, thank you so much for listening to us.